Good morning. Welcome back, everybody, from summer. We're now officially into our autumn season, and you're here with myself, Ria Ingleby, and Gavin. Hey, Gavin.
Hey, good morning, Ria. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic.
All recharged and ready to go again.
Absolutely, yeah. First day back after an absolutely fantastic summer, and delighted to be back with our ninth webinar of the year. So
Wow.
I believe where the year's actually gone, but it's an important topic, this one. As we all know, we're into September, we've had the time off, and it's a busy time. I always find that September through to December is almost the busiest period of the year, where
I agree.
Deadlines are upon us. There's a lot of bugs floating around the office, and I don't know, it just seems to be a really busy period right up to almost that first or second week in December until we can step back. So
it is harvest.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So seasonally, this is what I've really noticed actually in the last, certainly as I've worked for myself, and all of the sales are very much driven by me and what I do. But if we think of the cycle of nature, spring is where you sow the seeds, summer is where you cultivate them, you give them everything that they need to grow, and then when we hit September or back end of August, it's harvest time. We've all seen the farmers out in the fields recently, so I'm never surprised, and I'm also aligned to kind of that rhythm because I live in the countryside, that yes, we see a lot more activity going on in that September period because it is harvest. And also I often find that I do a lot more work towards the back end of the year for that very reason as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I certainly agree with that. And it's just a busy time, and I think it's important that's why we position this particular webinar, obviously pause for performance, energy in the workplace, to take time out to reflect, and I think it can be a really empowering process to go through, and obviously being in tune to our own body and mind to make sure that we know when we're taking on too much. So that's what we're here to discuss, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, no, me too. This is like my real work that I do on a regular basis. And to your point that you mentioned there, Gavin, around the body's rhythm, the connection for me to nature is that, we are ultimately all part of nature, and the circadian rhythm, which us as human beings are very much governed by, that's our sleep-wake cycle. That if we're offline to that, then that impacts our energy levels. So, you'll know that if you're going to bed very late every night, and late may be different for each and every one of us as well. That's another podcast. But if you find that you're going to bed really late, but yet you're having to get up really early, then you're really off kilter, and that can impact your energy. So all of this ultimately is about coming back to that natural energy, that infinite energy actually that we all have within, physically, mentally, emotionally, but often gets hindered by the distractions and the pace of life that we operate in, more often than not throughout the year. And if we think about the summer period, many people listening, they may have been off on their holidays or away with children or just taking time out, or maybe you're coming up to going off on your holidays. And if you find that you're clambering for that kind of, can't wait for my holiday, I can't wait for that time off, then I think there's a fundamental question that we all need to be asking, is that why do I feel like that? Like, why is this holiday, or why is this time that I've got, why is this such a motivator for me to get to this point? We've all tried to get to that finish line, haven't we, of like, right, off on holiday next week. So what I'm going to share with you today is around some steps to help us all pause. So just pause each day, and the powerful effect that can have on your own energy levels, and some of the practical tips that I'll be taking you all through is things that you can weave into your day to day. I do this with clients that I work with, small businesses, large businesses, workshops, retreats, etc. And it really, this stuff works, and I think in today's world where we're constantly switched on, 24/7 access, 365 days a year, we need to find better ways of us managing tools around us and having tools rather than having the likes of Outlook manage us.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and Outlook is certainly one that really does. I've been away for a week, and already, I'm having these conversations about, I've only got 200 emails, and it's almost too much information. I just think, with so much information out there, with 24-hour news, the internet, just all of this instantaneous information that's bombarding us, it just can be so, I certainly find, almost overloading. So I think you make a really good point about, on a daily basis, taking that time to just step back from it.
Yeah, completely. So ultimately, this is all about us really connecting with our own internal rocket fuel. And, thinking of energy, yes, energy comes from other aspects. So food is an energy source. Actually moving creates energy within the body. So being able to move throughout the day, that can help to create energy. When we're feeling connected, engaged, happy about things, that in itself creates an energy. We also know that when we're feeling sad or low or depressed or anxious, etc., that can also have a knock-on impact on our energy, i.e. it feels a lot more low or a bit sludgy. So this is about us really connecting with our own internal rocket fuel and understanding actually what level is that at. I often liken this to many of us with our kind of phones, be it an Apple or a Samsung. When it gets to 10% on the battery life, we're all like, has anybody got a charger? Can I borrow your charger? Or you dip into your bag to get your charger out. But actually, how connected are we with our own? How do we know that we're at 20% and the red battery life is there? And I think that that's certainly a lot of the work that I'm doing at the moment, and we're going to touch on today. So if we can just move on to the next slide. And just as you see in this picture, let's build our rocket ship and think about what do we need to put into our rocket ship to make sure that we've got the right fuel, not just for an occasion, but for day-to-day life and the rhythms that we all operate in throughout our working week.
Yeah, fantastic. So Ria, talk to us about how, it may sound quite obvious, but I like the analogy of, the phones and the battery running down to 10 or 20%. What are those signs that we should be looking out for as individuals, but also as managers and employers for our staff to be aware if someone is kind of getting down to those low battery levels?
So there's not one, I know this isn't going to be particularly helpful, it will manifest in different ways for different people. So I think as a manager, knowing your team well, first and foremost, is going to really help you out. Being able to have those conversations as well, so that about how somebody operates with their energy. So, asking them the question, when do you feel at your best? What do you need to help you feel at your best? When is the best time of the day for you to work really well? When do you have that optimum energy? And depending on the answers to those questions is going to ultimately dictate the type of support that individual may need. So they might turn around to you and say, I don't know, I don't have much energy at anyone.
Yeah.
And that in itself is going to that's going to be a conversation between the employee and their manager, to just look at that deeper. So I think that this can go into various different ways. So somebody with low energy, physically, it could be that you notice they're yawning a lot more at work, or you just notice that they're just kind of sat and their postures kind of all curling in. They can make some comments around, don't have time to go to the gym, or that's too tiring, or that sounds like too much like hard work, etc., etc. In terms of mentally and emotionally, with low energy, again, it's the language that individual's using, which may differ from what you've previously experienced. Or they openly say to you, feeling really stressed out at the moment, or they're particularly angry or snappy, or just generally just this low mood. So I think as a manager, our role is to, number one, know our people, ask them those questions around, when are you at your best, or when have you been at your best? What can I do to help you feel at your best in the workplace? And then once you've got the answers to those questions, and you also know your people really well as a manager, you'll then know what that battery life is for each and every single one in your team. And sometimes actually managers are in a great position, dependent on the awareness of the individual, that they can often catch it, not all the time, but more sometimes than the actual individual, because they might be in the middle of a project or particularly busy, and it's that rabbit in the headlights kind of analogy, or they can't see the woods for the trees, whereas a manager sometimes has got that more of a helicopter view of the wider team and can notice when somebody might be going down that slippery slope of low energy.
And I guess that can then, some of the other signs are, as you say, there's the state of physical, emotional, possibly mental exhaustion. But as a manager, that may well then lead to mistakes in their work, poor performance, possibly, it could even cascade onto, absenteeism. But I think there certainly are signs there that we as managers can be alert to. And as you say, that helicopter view is really important.
Yeah, totally. So this whole ethos of pause for performance, just allowing pause points for your team throughout the day and for yourself as a manager and a leader within your organisation. A leader in an organisation actually just pausing to think about what's happened over the last 9 months of this year, taking your team away from that and having that conversation, and actually what do we want to do for the remainder of the end of the year, for our next couple of quarters. I think that is really, really powerful. But I also feel that having some of those own practices yourself that you do on a daily or have a regular practice kind of then helps to do some of those bigger shifts within a organizational system or a business.
Absolutely. Okay. So Ria, talk to us through what if there were any tips that you could give our listeners on this webinar, so anyone listening back, for what they might be able to do just to make sure that they're on the right path and they're stopping, reflecting, and just making sure their energy levels are up to the maximum. I know there's certainly things that I've done for myself in kind of taking myself away from a stressful environment, and simple things like going for a walk of work for me, just to be able to clear my head and take time out to just refocus before I do sense I might be on a path of burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look at the next slide around taking our time. So as I touched on earlier, and you've just kind of highlighted it there, this kind of change that we are rapidly going through within our workplace, the world at large, and we are all well equipped to deal with these. We really are. So often we can grasp for those quick fixes, that cup of coffee to boost our energy, or the can of energy drink, but in terms of thinking about longer term, how do I want to maintain this pace that I'm operating at? Maintain this energy. It's about us really thinking about taking our time and planning our time. So if you think of maybe a marathon runner or half marathon, I often say, you have to learn to stay under the breath, because actually if you're in mile 1 or mile 2 and you are panting and really struggling with your breathing, and you're really pushing your pace, you're not even going to get to mile 10 or mile 20, or you really need to start to think about the links to your breathing. So if we think of that in the workplace, if you find that your breathing is really rapid, or you find that you hold your breath every single time an email lands in your inbox, or you open up your inbox and you find that you hold your breath when you open it, it's like bracing yourself, then that's an indication that you need to build in some more time, some more pause points into your time. So really, pause is about having that space and time to think, to breathe, remember to breathe, to really think about, nothing is certain in life, and there's going to be some things that happen that are unpredictable within your workplace or outside of your workplace. And all of this is about us really thinking about our home and life as well. So I want these tools that I'm going to share with you to cross over both of them. So taking our time, if we think of one of the biggest time robbers, certainly within the workplace that I've experienced, is meetings or Outlook, or your web mail, however you get your mail, and that can be where things are flying in, emails coming in. It can also be the meetings that you have in your diary on a day-to-day or weekly basis. So we talk about this whole concept of white space. So if we can move on to the next one. So if we even think of the summer period, I know you say sort of coming back in for you, Gavin, first day back in, and 200 odd emails.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at your inbox, and all of a sudden you're just greeted by this deluge of just loads of names and subjects. And actually, how nice would it be to have this white space that we come back into, and that can come in different ways. So when your diary is bursting at the seams because you have got back-to-back meetings in, or you've got a lot of meetings in throughout the day, we need to start thinking about really protecting time for ourselves. And that time can be to reflect on how the meeting went, or reflect on the interaction you've had with a customer, how that went. It can be time for you to recharge yourself, like we would, boost our little phones up, having that time to recharge ourselves. And it can be time for us to go grab a drink, rehydrate, refuel, or get yourself some food, or it can be time, as you were saying earlier, going for a walk, getting outside, getting some fresh air, maybe going out with a colleague and talking about something. So this white space, this particular pause practice, works best when you actually do some advanced planning. So for all of our listeners, and those of you listening back to this recording, this is probably going to take you between 15 to 20 minutes for you to do this particular activity that I'm going to share with you. And I would say that you would really want to be doing this on a weekly basis. It may feel a bit unnatural to begin with, dependent on how you operate within your day-to-day working life, and personal life as well. Or this may be actually something that you think, wow, why haven't I not done this earlier? Or you have done it, and we'd love to hear from you and your experiences. So 15 to 20 minutes, something that you're going to do in advance on a weekly basis. So you need access to your diary to be able to do this. So you can do this live as well if you want, Gavin. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up your kind of mail. So it could be Outlook, for example, and you're going to look at the end or the beginning of the week. What makes sense to you? So given that we're on Monday, we're at the beginning of the week, we'll look at it from today. So we can just flip onto the next slide. So this particular example that you see here, you can see like these back-to-back jobs or meetings that you have in the diary. Now, I'm conscious that not all of us have a direct influence on some of our meetings or the jobs that we do. So you need to find a way of bookending your day or having a conversation with people that do influence that to kind of get their support. So what you're going to start to do is you're going to look at your week, Monday through to Friday, and I always go with a fundamental. So what is fundamentally important for us all to do is to eat. So how many of us actually block out our lunch period?
No, I think in this day and age, we're rushing around. Sometimes I find, I hate to say it, you might skip lunch because there's just so little time in the day, and you find you're eating at your desk or you're just grabbing something on the run.
So what we start to give the message to people, and what the message that we give ourselves, is that I am not important. Everything that is in my diary is more important than I am. Now, we've all jumped on a plane in the past, or many of us have jumped on a plane. The first thing they say to us is put your oxygen mask on before you help others. Now, if we're doing this on a regular basis where we're not taking that lunch break, that time for ourselves to eat some food and just have a bit of time to ourselves to be able to do that, rather than multitasking, which is completely fictitious, we can't multitask, then we're not going to be the best for ourselves, and we're certainly not going to be the best for the people around us. So this activity for you to consider is that between now and Friday, look at blocking out your meal times. So you may block out your lunch, or you may want to, depending on what your work pattern is, you may want to block out your breakfast, lunch and dinner and schedule that into your calendar. And you schedule that in as white space, or you call it lunch, whatever it may be. But you are now starting to create this white space. So you'll see on there, there you go, lunch and recharge, and then, off out for a walk as well.
Yeah, really important to break it up like that, just so, in contrast to the image on the left, to break it up like that is taking that time out to pause. And I guess you're going to be much more productive. Completely.
So if we follow it through from, we've taken what I would deem as one of the most important things to be putting in our diary, which is ensuring that we have some food. And, if this feels new or strange, so you mentioned, Gavin, that, we just often just work through it and you just get on with it. But I would just say that, notice what it is that is the resistance for that, or what's preventing you from allowing that to be working through lunch. So we start to observe it. The other thing that you might want to put into your diary as well is, for those of you that have commitments for if you're caring for somebody, if you've got children, you may want to put in the times in your calendar around when you commute and do the school run. So that could also be something that you put into your calendar each week, so that you've got all of that. And then next, look at your business appointments and start to identify any that are back to back with no space in between. And I can guarantee you that if you turn around to an individual and say, okay, we're going to do, rather than a 60-minute meeting, we're going to do 45 minutes. We're going to start at 1:15 and make sure we're wrapped up by 11. If that person has had a 9 till 10 o'clock meeting, and then you've said to them, our meeting will start at 1:15, how grateful do you think that person's going to be to you to give them 15 minutes grace of at least being able to go to the toilet, or even for them literally to breathe and just have 15 minutes just for them to kind of gather themselves before they come into the meeting with you. I've not yet had one person, and I've done this with a lot of people in a lot of different organisations, say to me, well, no, I don't, I just want to go straight into my next meeting. I don't want that space. So think about how you can start to weave that into your diary, that actually, rather than it being the classic default position we fall into with Outlook, which is 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1. What if you did actually 5 past or 10 past, or even better, quarter past to 11? Or if you can really consolidate your meeting, then make it even shorter. These are just examples that I'm playing with here, but to start to give you this sense of, you can start to put these little white spaces into your diary really effectively when it comes to your business commitments, your business appointments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I know certainly if I've had meetings booked here at our head office where they're back to back, you don't have that time to kind of reflect on the meeting, to digest, to maybe write up some of the notes, and then before you know it, you're into another one, onto a completely different project, and part of that's lost. Part of the what's been achieved in that original meeting has gone by the wayside. So it's a drainer. It becomes so when you think of your energy, your mental energy, that person that's just been with you in that particular, on that call, that meeting, or whatever it may be, you've given them all your focus time and energy for that hour, and then you're straight into the next meeting. So you've not been able to have that
sense of consolidating, capturing any kind of, unless you've had a wrap up, which often, you know, my kind of experience is that you don't necessarily always get those wrap up times at the end of meetings. It's like, oh, right, quick, everyone on to the next meeting, I've got to go. So these are all things that can really enhance your energy, your mental energy, your emotional energy, your physical energy, by having these put into the day.
Fantastic. And what about, I mean, I'm an early bird. My wife hates it because my body clock is wired so that I'm up early, and I know I'm firing on all cylinders early in the morning, and she's completely the opposite. You know, she's firing all cylinders much later in the evening. So almost going back slightly, Ria, before, what we've been talking about is obviously planning your day. What about taking that time out to maybe allocate that 15-20 minutes to reflect on, let's say, a weekly basis, maybe getting a cafetiere of coffee on, and switching all devices off, and reflecting and planning to be much more productive. What's your take on that?
So I've read quite a few books on this particular topic around like having weekly intentions, kind of almost rituals or practices, and I do it a lot myself. So a week for me is that every Sunday I kind of reflect on the previous week that I've had. I look to the week ahead and kind of really prioritize maybe 2 or 3 things that I really want to be focusing on the week ahead, and anything that I need to carry over from the week before. So I do kind of this aspect of reflecting and also planning forward. As part of that weekly process is where I build in things like, you know, when do I want to go for a run, or when do I want to go for a swim or go for a walk, with or without the family. You know, I start to build those into my week. So what you see up on the screen at the moment is very much very work related, but outside of this is kind of that family time, and also my time, my oxygen mask time, to be able to do all of that other stuff. So exactly to your point, I often put on a cafetiere of coffee, and we'll do all of those things. And I often find as well on a Sunday evening is when my daughter's in bed, is I start to think, right, okay, week ahead, how do we juggle with school drop-offs this week if I'm out traveling or working elsewhere, and then every morning I have a very reflective practice every morning. I get up about 6, which is very hard for me. I'm not a morning person, but I regularly meditate for 25 minutes every morning. That used to be 5 minutes, and it's gradually just built up. And you know, I'm not saying that that isn't necessarily something that everybody should be doing. I think even if you're not meditating, but just having some quiet time for you to read a book or just reflect on your day ahead. You know, what we wake up and it's like, I've got so many things to do, but actually, who do we want to be today? Do we want to be more creative? Do we want to be focused? Do we want to be decisive? Do we want to be strategic? How different would our days look if we actually approach them from a sense of who do I want to be today, or who do I want to be this week, as opposed to what do I need to do on my endless list this week?
Yes,
I often think we would approach our week and our planning, and therefore our energy levels would be higher if we're more aligned to who we want to be as opposed to what we need to do.
Would you recommend maybe noting down, or having like an A5 notebook that you can maybe write down your reflections? You can then read back, see what, you know, the threads are, what ideas, or you know, what challenges you've got ahead are, and you know, maybe that could be a way of just helping you move forward.
Yeah, totally. There's been a lot of research in the space of journaling, meditation, these contemplative, reflective practices, and all of the evidence is showing that these are all really beneficial for our health, for our well-being, therefore our energy. So I think I wouldn't necessarily, I think you need to do what works for you. I think there's lots of different advice out there around buy this book or get this or do that. I think that the minute you actually pause and start to ask yourself those questions, what do I need to be more energized, or how can I increase my energy, you then start to craft and carve your own path, and then therefore the tools that can help you do that. So the white space is a great activity for you to start to find, what that is for you. By asking those questions. When do I want to eat my lunch? What are the most important meetings? How can I ensure I have some space for me? What do I want to do in that white space that I have? Is it being creative? Is it going for a walk? Is it connecting with a colleague? Is it eating my lunch? Whatever that may be.
Fantastic. And at the end of the day, this is all about improving ourselves, improving our own well-being. And I think through using some of these techniques and tactics, we can stop, pause, and almost ask ourselves questions like, what have I learned about myself? How can I use my potential to its best? And it's almost looking at strengths and weaknesses. What are my biggest areas for improvement? I think it's really important to take that time out and to reflect.
Yeah, so, completely.
We've got the slide here around breathe. I mean, this is obviously something we do day in, day out, subconsciously. Without it, we wouldn't get very far. And I know we touched on it very briefly about, when emails come through, and you may well, like I opened my inbox this morning, see the 200 emails, gasp for breath. But talk us through this slide, Ria.
Yeah, so this has been really fascinating for me over the years around, as you said, it's something that we all naturally do. And thank God we don't have to always, often happens unconsciously. Our body breathes for, our lungs breathe for us. Our diaphragm comes into play. But actually what I found is when we start to really pay attention and consciously observe the breath or watch the breathing, just notice what our breathing's doing, we start to notice some really fascinating things. So I had noticed that when I was working on looking at emails, certain emails that would come in, I would hold my breath, and I'm like, oh. And then I'd be watching, I'm a massive Walking Dead fan, and I was finding, as I was watching that, I was holding my breath, because it's scary. pretty gruesome and scary. But you start to notice, and I was thinking, wow, I'm holding my breath. So what messages am I sending to my body when I hold my breath? And that's all information that the body's receiving. It all starts to contribute towards our emotional state, our mental state, this heightened response of stress. So I got very interested in breathing. And I'm a qualified yoga teacher. Off my interest in breathing, that's where it started. And I have, over many, many years, really suffered with anxiety, and particularly reached a peak when I was diagnosed with cancer nearly 5 years ago. And I was having panic attacks on a regular basis over a 3-week period, not able to sleep, waking up, not able to breathe. And, that's where my fascination began with breathing. And I learned to control my breathing and learned to work with my breath through that very stressful 3-week period. And it worked. And I was like, hang on a minute. I've not needed to take anything particularly strong in terms of medication. There's something in this breathing stuff. And I've been doing a lot of research over the last 4.5 years, which has resulted in me becoming a yoga teacher. And the breath in yoga is called pranayama. So it's an ancient yogic practice of breath control. Pranayama, ultimately, the translation of that is our life force, and ultimately it means how you can extend or regulate your life force. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so you talk about the Force, and yeah, it all connects. So pranayama, as I said, it's this way of us doing an exercise with our breathing to recharge our energy, to relieve stress, which is definitely what I experienced in that very heightened emotional time of the 3 weeks, but actually helping me with my anxiety and panic attacks since. And it can also boost your overall health. It's really underutilized actually in the Western world, although it does crop up in places such as childbirth. One of the biggest things that women are often taught in childbirth is to really think about their breathing.
Yes.
The first thing that you'll say to somebody if they've hurt themselves and they're panicky is just breathe. It does come into play when somebody is either experiencing a lot of pain, i.e. childbirth, or if you've got someone that's really emotionally distressed and you just breathe. You start to notice how the power of the breath starts to come in and how it's used. But actually, in yogic times, Ayurveda, yoga, they've been using this to benefit energy. So it supports the health of the lungs and the respiratory system. So I spoke about, running or walking. Swimmers will know this, particularly when they're underwater, the power of the breath. So it brings energizing oxygen into all of the body cells. And the International Journal of Yoga did a study actually that they published on pranayama, which revealed that it improved breathing in people with bronchial asthma. It strengthens and tones the diaphragm, which is a bit like a trampoline. When you inhale and exhale, it's that trampoline type fashion, and the abdominal muscles. And that pranayama is one of the easiest techniques available to help you build your core strength, because you're using so many muscles when you really think about these breathing exercises that we do. It can break up digestive blockages that can cause low energy, and it can also help with things like fatigue and just getting rid of toxins and stuff around your body. So a lot of yoga practitioners or individuals that go along to classes, they often use pranayama to regulate emotions and enhance their mental energy for meditation. So I thought we'd just do a couple of minutes of a particular pranayama exercise.
Okay, let's do it. It sounds exciting.
Okay, so this is an exercise called balanced breathing. It's often also used in other professions, so fire brigade, under people that swim underwater. They will use a form of this technique to help them to strengthen their breath, their inhale, their exhale. So make sure you're nice and comfy and sitting upright in your chair, and just bring your attention to what your breath is naturally doing. So the inhale, the exhale, and then as you inhale, perhaps label it, mentally saying to yourself, inhale, and as you exhale, label it and mentally say to yourself, exhale. So you start to be very aware of your body breathing. And then this is where the balanced breathing that comes in. So what I'd like you to do is breathing in for 3, breathing out for 3. So we follow around almost like a square. Box breathing is another name that this can be called. So keep breathing in for 3 and out for 3. And if that's working for you right now, what you can start to do is increase that. So breathing in for 4, breathing out for 4. And just keep following that box all the way round. In for 3 or in for 4, out for 4. You may be aware of what your abdominals are doing, your diaphragm, your rib cage. You may have noticed that your breath has become deeper. So we're moving away from the chest breathing that often we can do, and we overuse our chest muscles actually. And we go deeper into our abdominals, abdominal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, which is our primary muscles that we really want to be using in breathing. It's our natural state to use these muscles. The chest is the secondary muscles, they assist. They shouldn't be driving it. So we're just, we're kind of come back to your normal breath there. And before I go on any further, how was that for you, Gavin?
It was incredibly calming, as weird as it sounds, but I think taking that time just to focus on your breathing did feel like I was just much more relaxed, much more aware of what was going on around me.
Yeah. It's very powerful, and you know, we didn't even do a 2 minutes there, and exactly what you said there, Gavin, you know, those moments of you becoming really calm. I also experienced that, and I was thinking, you know, I was about to go in to have a CT scan and I was shaking like a leaf, and I went back to doing my breathing exercises and I was just very calm. And it's just so powerful, the breath. So when we're able to really slow down, connect to our breath, they often say in yogic traditions that the breath is the connector of the mind and the body, and in practicalities I think that is so true. You know, you'll often hear, I've heard runners and swimmers say that, you know, even that can be really meditative for me. I can feel like I'm doing a meditation when I'm out running or when I'm swimming.
Yeah.
That's because you're so connected to your breath. Now, meditation is all about the integration of mind and body and being able to kind of just be very present. So when you're running or you're swimming, you have to be very present with your breath. You have to know what it's doing. And that's, you know, you imagine if you just did this every single day in one of your white spaces, 1 minute, 2 minutes of just focusing on your breath. The calmness that you get, that's going to have a knock-on beneficial impact on decisions that you may need to make, a creative session that you may be going into, and your general energy, you know, how you're feeling. So, you know, if rather than reach for the energy drink, you know, try this first and then see, do I still need it? And often it isn't. You just need some good oxygen circulating through your body, and not feeling like you're running a 100-meter sprint every single hour.
Powerful stuff, absolutely. And I'll certainly be looking up, you know, details around pranayama. Is that what it's called?
Pranayama? Yeah, pranayama. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really powerful. Yeah, totally. So those were my two that I wanted to share with everybody today. So the white space and the activity that you've all got, and I'm connecting you to something that you carry around with you every single day. Your breath, your kit is in you. Your lungs, your diaphragm, or your abdominal muscles. Your heart. You know, all of those things that contribute to you breathing well. So yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, I think that was a really powerful session, and there's certainly plenty to take away from that. And we covered a lot actually in this. I mean, as you say, we talked about white space, the power of breathing, the power of reflecting. I'll certainly be taking time out on my morning, maybe to get in my favourite comfy chair with the coffee, just to sit down and reflect on the previous week and look about what I'm going to tackle for the week ahead. But most importantly, stepping away and pausing. I think that's one thing that we just don't do enough, and taking that time away to just pause. And you know, a marathon isn't run at 100 miles an hour. You know, and it's not a race. And taking that time away to just reflect, and I think it's a very empowering process. I think athletes know the power of the pause actually exceptionally well. They really do.
And my work now is very much around helping individuals in workplaces really understand that power as well.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, just moving on to the wrap up. So we've got 3 more sessions left for the year. So I don't know where the year's actually gone. We've got 3 left, 3 really punchy topics. So first of all, October 1st is cancer in the workplace. And obviously you touched on cancer briefly earlier, Ria. Do you want to give us an overview of this one?
Yeah, so I'm going to be joined by a wonderful woman and friend of mine, Bep, who previously worked at Mars. Bep was diagnosed with breast cancer. She's now a coach running her own business called Thrive 365. So she's going to be joining me for this call next month, Cancer in the Workplace. And as I touched on, I was diagnosed nearly 5 years ago now, and Bep and I are really on this kind of path to help more workplaces support people with cancer. So 1 in 2 people now, which is shocking statistics, are diagnosed with cancer or will be diagnosed with cancer. So, this is a huge area for workplaces to get their head around. And certainly my personal experience in workplaces, when I was first diagnosed, was really mixed. I had some very supportive individuals around me, but I also had some really dire examples of things as well. So Bep and I are really kind of opening up the conversation around workplaces, how managers can help. We want to help workplaces help as well, and clearly for the individuals who when they're diagnosed don't always know what's right for them, or don't really know what to ask because they could still be in that period of shock. It's going to be a really diverse conversation around this topic of cancer in the workplace.
Fantastic. Well, with that ratio of 1 in 2, that's quite scary. So obviously the chances of any of us having an employee or a family member with cancer is sadly quite high. So that's why we want to put this one on, to get the messaging out there so that we can just be much more supportive in that area.
Yeah.
Then we're moving on to Sleep Awareness Month in November. So this is obviously as important as breathing, eating and sleeping, but this is all about the focused on simple ways to improve our quality of sleep, which is obviously going to have long-term benefits for everyone involved. And then lastly, as we move into December, on the 3rd of December, we've got a fascinating talk which is around financial well-being. And I know we've got a good friend and colleague of yours,
Kate.
Kate. Yeah. On this one. So just give
Lovely, Kate Talbot. So Kate will be joining me on this call. Kate's a financial advisor. We'll be exploring financial well-being. So within workplaces, there's a lot of focus around financial well-being in general across the business well-being sector. There's a couple of organisations that do a lot of work in this space. So a couple of that spring to mind is a company called Neighbour and Salary Finance that operate within the kind of business financial well-being, so like an employee benefit. So Kate and I will be talking about financial well-being. Kate's got some amazing information to share on the day that again, people will go away with some practical tips from. So looking forward to that one, and just before Christmas which is good as well.
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. Right, well, last couple of slides here. So we've got a course. We got a range of e-learning courses online for only 40 quid. I mean, 40 quid. You can do this at home or in the workplace. We've got a fantastic stress awareness management and wellbeing course which you can undertake. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, just visit the Chamber's website. That's in the e-learning section, and it's a fantastic course. And you can do it on your desktop, you can do it on a laptop. I think you can even do it on your phone if you want to. But obviously that dovetails into a lot of what we've been talking about today, and on some of the other sessions where we covered stress in the workplace and obviously mental health issues. And then lastly, it's a bit of a plug, this one, but we've got 2 chamber member benefits. We've got a partnership with AXA PPP, where you can access a whole range of healthcare services, and you can actually save 50% on your Chamber of Commerce membership fees. And then we've got another partnership with Westfield Health. Again, this is heavily discounted. It's a primary healthcare plan for you or your employees for as little as £5.30 a month. So extremely competitively priced, and details are on the website if you're interested. That is a wrap for us, I think. I'm certainly feeling invigorated for my first day back and tackling those 200 emails. It's been a fascinating session. I just want to say a massive thank you to Ria and everyone who's online this morning.
Thank you. It's been great kind of sharing some of this stuff with you. And if anybody has any questions or wants to kind of talk about any of it and the whole ethos around pause for performance as well in business, then feel free to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you, Ria, and thanks everyone for listening. This will be uploaded to the Chamber's website, along with all of the other podcasts and webinars. And we'll see you on the next session.
Yeah, see you in October.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Gavin. Cheers. Bye.